Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I'm so happy to have you joining us on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those wanting to create financial wellness, and we're going to look at different life cycles, and we're going to explore them both financially and emotionally, because personal finances are usually not about the money. They are about your emotions associated with your funds. And as we were talking about right before the show, your feelings and your finances are all in one. You can't separate them. They come together. But one thing I do know is that the healthier you are emotionally, then the better prepared you are to make financial decisions and other decisions as well. And we're going to be a little general in our discussion, but we'd love to hear from you. So you can reach out to me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial, or you can post your comments, questions, anything else on YouTube and Facebook, anywhere else that you might be listening, because right now we are on dozens of platforms, which is exciting too. Before we get into the show, I do just want to do a public service announcement. Being a tax preparer, I know that we are actually in a really busy season. You have less than 2 weeks left until the deadline for filing your extension. So please make sure that you get that in for your tax preparer. Make sure they can help you by getting a timely and accurate tax return. All right, let's go to the show now that all the fun of taxes is over. Going through a divorce, as weird as this might sound, is actually a wonderful opportunity. And yes, you heard that right. As much as going through it might feel like it's bringing you down, or even sometimes right after you might feel a little deflated, it can really help you and it can raise you to heights you never thought you could ever attain, which is amazing. I think often in a marriage, we lose who we are, whether it's to the marriage, to the kids, to kind of being part of that unit, or maybe trying to save your marriage, whatever it is. Sometimes we forget who we are, especially the longer the marriage goes. So how do you make this opportunity happen? How do you divorce your old identity and redefine who you are? Well, I would say you listen to Cat Blake and myself for the next 30 to 40 minutes. I think it's always exciting to have Cat on the show, not only because I think Cat's one of the most inspiring souls, and I mean that sincerely, but I think also because her training, her personal experiences, her work with divorcees gives her a wonderful insight into a lot of things, and she's always willing to share them, which is something not everybody does. 20-year veteran as a psychotherapist, as a child and family therapist, is a certified divorce coach and author, and a lot more. Kat, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be back.
It's always great. And as I said earlier, you've been through some experiences that have really molded. I think we've known each other for a few years already. Yep. And I know that your personal experiences are major motivators for you in what you do and how you live your life. So I think I'm going to use my words. Your journey can help other people explain or understand a little bit more about the passion behind you. Can you share a little bit of your background for them so that they see that?
Gosh, professional or personal?
That's up to you. I don't want to get too personal.
So I started my journey as a trained child and family therapist. And because of that, I was certainly involved with a lot of custody cases in the court system. Often would work hand in hand with some GALs. And then in 2010, I went through my own high conflict divorce and spent most of the next 10 years in and out of court with a very high conflict partner. And so I learned after that, I'm a social worker by training. I really wanted to empower my folks to have the skills, the education, the self-care strategies to be able to navigate the legal process, but also, as you said, navigate the emotional process. Because often when our emotions are out of control or we're reacting all the time, that's when we tend to make sloppy decisions in the legal process and decisions that end up costing us a lot of money.
I would add to that, one of the things, I'm going to quote your website. I think it's your website. I don't remember exactly where I read it. And I found this on the finance side when I went through my divorce, is it doesn't matter how kind of financial aware I was, or potentially you were working as a therapist, it doesn't necessarily mean you're prepared to go through a divorce.
No, not at all. I mean, I had no clue that my life post-divorce was going to be so challenging. I figured, we'd get through the divorce and then we'd be like this great, amazing, cool, blended co-parenting kind of family. And it just didn't work that way. So
ideally, that's how it should work, right? I mean, these are our kids. They're special to both of us. That's how it should work. And I think part of that is really, so many people, I guess, they want to sign on the dotted line and say, we're done. Well, no, you're not. It's just a brand new first chapter in the rest of your life you've signed off. So just keeping that in mind, sometimes having the guidance like Kat and being able to be more deliberate in what you do helps you with all of what we've been talking about. And, for the most part, people want to go through their divorce, come out the other side, as we're saying, move forward with their life, hopefully unscathed. So what are some of the barriers, do you think, of people just getting through this? Like, let's start on a high level. We'll drill down, but very generally, what do you think are some of the barriers that people need to think of, like, to overcome and think about?
So I'm going to say there's the divorce paper, right? That's one thing. But just because you get the paper doesn't mean you're actually healed and ready to define your new life. So I tell people that it's two different kinds of processes going on there. So one of them that I definitely am a big believer in is your mindset. So, mindsets are things that we say to ourselves over and over again to the point that they become a belief system. Some of our beliefs are in our awareness. Some of them are not. They're in our subconscious. Right. But our thoughts, how we interpret the world around us, is definitely going to determine how you emote or feel about it. And then it's going to determine how you behave around it, right? So if we can get to the first step, the mindset, how are you thinking? This between our ears is often our biggest enemy. And we tend to believe that it's always telling us the truth. And often it's not. It's telling us distortions. It's telling us traumas from our past. It's not actually giving us an accurate perspective of what's going on in front of us. So your thoughts either help you or they hinder you. So number one is really looking at your mindset. Are there thoughts of, I'm not worthy? Was there a betrayal in the marriage that led to thoughts of, I'm not lovable? I'm naive. All men are this, all women are this, whatever it is, whatever those destructive narratives are, they're going to hinder you in your divorce recovery. They're going to keep you pulled back instead of moving forward.
And I just want to point out, our last show together was actually all about mindset.
Yes, it was.
That.
I talk a lot about that.
It's been a little while. I need to get you on more often, obviously, but yes.
Right. I mean, something as simple as, I do a lot of work around toxic relationships. I grew up in a family, and we used to say things to each other. Things like, our family doesn't have any luck. You're supposed to really work very hard and give. And if you do that, we're Italian, then we're going to go to heaven, right? So it's all these little things that you have to really pull up by the root, and you have to own them to get rid of them and say, is this thought helping me or hindering me? Those thoughts actually led me to being in really horrible love relationships, right? So,
I want to give an example that I actually yesterday spoke to a client about, which I think is just so appropriate for what you're saying. And yes, I can understand why she is angry with her soon-to-be ex. I get it. Don't get me wrong. But if you can think in your mindset, instead of being angry at them, feeling sorry for them, that's how they live their life. Is it sad that they have to live their life in that manner, whether it's control every situation, whatever it might be?
Yep.
And having that kind of a shift sometimes helps you, not them. You can't change them, but it helps you in a very different way.
And it helps
you not to reframe it.
Right. So now you're not personalizing it. You're not having that thought of, why are they doing this to me? I'll always be a victim to them. They're always going to run my life. Right. Because those are destructive thoughts. Those are thoughts that are going to set you up for having a really hard time co-parenting and thriving post-divorce.
Yeah. No, I love that. And then, so I'm going to ask, what do you mean when you actually say divorce your old identity, right? We can't, we can't say, I want to be so-and-so. Well, no, you got to be yourself. You can't be so-and-so. That's already taken. How do you do that? How do you?
So that's a big part of my work. And I think this is a difference between surviving versus thriving through your divorce. So our relationships, so I live in a seaside community here up near Boston. And, when we see buoys in the water, they tell us to stay to the right, to stay to the left, to speed up, to slow down. People in our lives are like those buoys. They kind of tell us where to pour our energy, right? How to respond, which direction do I move into? And so for better or for worse, there is this period where we're going to move when we go through a divorce where you kind of lose your identity. Who am I now? Right? Now I don't have the buoys. I don't know where my energy goes towards. So for a lot of my folks, particularly those getting out of toxic relationships, first we have to identify what the old identity is. Are you an enabler? Are you a codependent? Are you the victim, right? Are you the betrayed spouse? And we need to identify what it is first, because we have to let it go in order to grow. But knowing there's this period where we're going to sit that is great discomfort. It feels like you don't have stable ground to stand on. You don't really know who you are. And your brain is going to keep going, go back to the old, because it's what's known. It's the easiest thing to do, even when we know that's not really good for us. So if we can sit in this sort of ambivalent period, there is a point where the shift occurs where we start moving towards what I call our star. Who do I want to be post-divorce? What actually makes me happy? What have I lost about myself in my marriage that I can now regain? What's on my bucket list? Who really would be a good partner for me? What do I want to do on a Saturday morning? And the more we can sort of have that intentional, disciplined approach to it, the better able we can sit in this ambivalent period and move on and thrive post-divorce.
And I think sometimes having an objective voice like yourself walk that path with you is so important for a lot of reasons. But one of them is sometimes we think we, so to speak, one role or character, but we really 2 or 3 other characters as well, or whatever it might be, where we think, oh, I'm the victim. But then when we think, okay, but what's my part in this? Or, wherever you want to go. And sometimes we're not the people we always think we are, because we've been told something so often that now we believe it. So being able to re-identify who you are, I think, becomes a very important piece of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of my folks, and I work with both men and women, but when you're leaving an abusive marriage, what happens is sometimes people actually internalize the abuser, and that becomes part of the mindset.
Right.
So if you, for example, don't feel like you deserve success, or you don't deserve love, or there's something faulty about you, that's going to hinder you in reaching that star.
Yeah, I had a client, I'm going back, it's got to be 4 years at this point, kept saying to me, he told me, it was the wife I was dealing with, kept saying to me, he told me I'd never get a mortgage. This was he told her a lot of things, but this in particular. And I said to her, we're going to get you a mortgage. Don't worry, before this whole house thing is sold and all the rest. And I still remember it was a Friday morning, and he called her and was yelling at her and you need me to get the mortgage. And she literally turned around and said to him, I signed my new mortgage yesterday.
Yay.
And that was a huge, when she said to me, she called me walking out of the mortgage bank. It was right before COVID. She literally called me and said, Hirsch, this is one of the biggest steps I've ever taken in my life, because he kept telling me and I kept believing.
Yep.
So being able to know who you are, being able to understand who you should be versus who you are, but now maybe even, or could be, I think is a enormous difference for somebody going.
It's amazing. I mean, at every loss, you and I have spoken about this, right? There is the potential for growth. At this point for most of us who are divorcing or divorced, you get to redefine your life more in accordance with who you are, your values, and what you want out of life.
Right.
I think a lot of us kind of do and I'm not blaming Disney, right? But we tend to follow the script, right? We go to college, we get a career, we meet our person, we get married, we get the house in the suburbs, right? And for a lot of people, they wake up one day and go, I'm not sure if this is actually what I even want. Right?
I know.
So I've had clients, I have a woman who left an incredibly abusive marriage, and she started spending months and months and months hiking through California, and has a huge Instagram following. I mean, she's really found her soul and purpose. I have another gentleman who moved to Costa Rica and opened a surfing company. I mean, it's like there's so many options that are outside of that like really strict Disney movie that we all live in, right?
I might want his number.
Some lessons.
Go to Costa Rica and surf. I mean, come on, what a great vacation.
Great.
It's a wonderful way to start your day. And you know, that's another thing I think that happens so often to us. Life takes us on in a way we never expected it.
Mm-hmm.
And we, as you said, we kind of form to the norm,
right,
as opposed to who am I? And I think historically would look at those people who did their own thing, as we used to say, like, you know, they used to drum to their own beat kind of thing.
Right.
Or beat to their own drum. I don't remember the exact phrase. Yeah. And we used to look at that as like weird. And now I think more and more people are saying, no, I need to do that. We get so ingrained in life. And I heard such an amazing theory. I'm not even sure if I've shared it on the show or not. It was called the broken vase theory. And the idea is that you have, like, I don't know, a Ming Dynasty vase, whatever it is, and you knock it over and you break it. Now you've got these pieces, these shards, and you really have three options. You can try to put it back together, but is it you're still going to see the cracks and the chips? You can say it's useless, I'm going to throw it out. Or you can take these pieces and create a mosaic that's new and beautiful, that, you know, you've something entirely new out of these old pieces. And they use it a lot in trauma, fairly recently become used in trauma more. And the idea really is that's what we are. We're going to go through this and we're going to try to be who we were, but we're never really going to be who we are. Or we're going to pretend it never happened, or are we going to create this new life and be determined? And I think that speaks so strongly to what you've been saying about mindset and being deliberate and thinking it through, you know, as to the future, not the moment. Absolutely. Which becomes such an important piece.
Yeah, I mean, I even encourage my clients to kind of go back. And again, some of this might not be in their awareness, but do they hold any mindsets just around being a single dad or being a single woman or a single parent? Is there stuff from their own childhood that's coming up that's getting triggered? You know, it's a difference between walking out of your door in the morning and being like, you know, I'm a single mom, right? Like, I'm a single mom, you know, like, you know, it's really, and the way I look at it is I think the world really responds to the energy we put out in our new identity. So
yeah, I agree with that.
Everyone else feels good about it, right?
Yeah, if you're positive and encouraging in your demeanor, people want to be around you. If you're grumpy all the time, people don't want to be around you. I mean, let's just start on that simplistic view of who do I want in my life. I tend to want positive, upbeat people. You know, so I agree with you. The energy you put out is going to attract a lot of, you know, what you want in your life, for sure.
Absolutely.
And we do have to start heading to a break. Don't go anywhere. But before we do, Kat, how can people get in touch with you and reach out and learn more?
Yeah, so my website is probably the easiest. It's that's my thing. It's catblakecdc.com. It stands for Certified Divorce Coach. You can email me at cat@catblakecdc.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. It's Kat, the Relationship Coach on Instagram. But yeah, definitely reach out if you guys have any questions. I offer a free consultation and see if I can offer some help to you.
So catblakecdc.com, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Thomas. I want to share with you a professional products and services directory we call Going Solo Directory. And you need to check this out. If you want exposure to your business or are seeking professional product or services, this directory has it all. And that membership, for the many special features, you get the benefit of a worldwide exposure with a 40-minute video interview on an international business show showcase. All this for just one low annual fee. For more information, contact GoingSoloDirectory.com.
Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. I am Hirsch Serman, and this is the Financial Wellness Hour. We have Cat Blake joining me today, and I'm loving this conversation because I think there's so much, whether you're going through a difficult situation or not, applies to people being able to really think about who do you want to be and really divorce that old personality, that old life that you might not really be happy with, and figure out, what do I want in my life? And I'm going to recap a few things. I do have to just say again, less than 2 weeks till the extension deadline for taxes. Kat shared a little bit about her background, and we both spoke about how even though we were very competent in certain areas related to divorce, for other people, we were horribly equipped to handle our own in many ways. We spoke about the barriers to going through divorce. What does divorcing your old identity mean? What does it look like? Why it's important to your recovery. We spoke a lot about mindset, which, as I said, there's another show that we've done just on mindset. And we spoke a little bit about that broken vase theory and really becoming this new, beautiful mosaic that you can be. We did touch on, and I want to come back to it if you don't mind, a little bit about what are some of the things to think about or focus on when looking for this new identity? Because I'll tell you, and you know this, I'm sure I've shared it with you. My very first blog ever that was picked up was originally called "Divorce is Awesome," right? Yeah. And I toned that down a little bit to perspective and everything. And I wish I didn't. I will say it. Like 8 years later, I'm still. But the idea really was, like, if you read the first paragraph, like my life was dying this excruciatingly horrible death. And then I realized there's an opportunity in this. And I created a top 10 list of what are the things. One of them was reconnecting with myself. Some of them were people you've lost, some of the things, the love, the things that really you love doing, whatever it was. But I think one of the big ones is reconnecting with yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
And so let's talk a little bit more about that, if you don't mind, because I do think we go through a divorce. I think for the most part, people understand your income is relatively the same between the two of you. You've got two households. Something's got to give. And I always try to build a priorities and values-based life with my clients, right? So I think you can fit more into your life with less.
Oh, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about what you think or how you feel about that. No, I mean, really,
You mean as far as there is a status change when it comes to finances. I think it takes most people 2 to 3 years to, completely recover from divorce.
Right.
Oh gosh, I'm just thinking. I had a client. She lived across the country. She didn't live anywhere close here. And she wrote me a letter, and she talked about how sad she was to have to leave the marital home. And she felt like she had really failed her children. And she was moving into a very tiny condo.
Yeah.
And she actually said that she was toying with thoughts of suicide. Like, it was so drastic for her. She wrote me a card a year later saying that she didn't realize that the house really wasn't all about her identity and who she was, nor her happiness, and that her and her daughter were living like their best life. So she didn't really understand that until she actually experienced it, you know?
Right.
I think, finances, that's a lot of your identity, right? Sometimes people have to give up things. Maybe it's memberships, maybe it's sports clubs, maybe it's a host of things. And then it's that ability to say, does this stuff really make me happy?
That's what I was hoping you were going to say.
Is this really what I want to hang my hat on for my identity? Or is there something else?
Yeah, I had a client who literally was saying that as well. Said, look, and came out with over 3 million in the split, right? So not hurting on the financial side, was very scared because of the lifestyle they were living was significantly more resources ultimately. And she said, I was scared in having to kind of redefine my life. But she realized, and they were in a very expensive club, and she said, I hated going there because everyone was pretentious. Everyone was like, I've got the nicest car, and if I don't, I got to go shopping on Sunday because I need them. It was a life that she said what was draining, not uplifting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things in our life that's a little extreme on the financial side, but I do think there are a lot of things in our life that we end up doing because that's what people do who live in this neighborhood, or
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
but they don't always bring us joy. And so being able to really evaluate, what are my values, what are my priorities, that's the life I want to end up living. You can do that with less financially.
Absolutely.
And be much more fulfilled.
And for a lot of, and you know, maybe I'm sounding generalist when I say this, but for a lot of my women, this isn't also an opportunity for them to become empowered around finances. You know, a lot of women are really taught to not speak about money, right? And let the husbands kind of manage everything. And I do encourage my clients to become empowered in this area, because the more you're post-divorce relying on, I hate to say it, but relying on alimony and child support, the more energetically tied you are to your ex.
You're still tethered, yes.
Right. And what an easy way to ruin your day by being 5 or 10 days late on child support, right, that you need for your mortgage payment.
Yes.
So, you know, part of this is this, again, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to be in the know. It's an opportunity to be the author of your life versus reacting to somebody else.
And we're going to get to that in a little bit. I think we're going to phrase it a little differently. But,
Okay.
you know, one of the things I want to add to or supplement there is that when you're dependent on somebody else, and somebody else that often you've gone through a really brutal divorce sometimes, you always feel less than, well, I don't want to say always, but often can make you feel less than.
Oh, yeah.
They the better person because I'm, you know, supported by them still, whatever it might be. So I think that's one thing. The other thing I do want to I point this out to all my clients, just because in this scenario, what we're talking about, he was doing the finances, doesn't mean he was doing it well. I'll start there. Very often is not doing it well. You'd be amazed when I'm looking at stuff, the sometimes thousands of dollars in interest and late fees that could have been avoided, that literally can add to your life in some way financially. The other thing is, no one was born with a calculator. Well, I'm not aware of anyone. And, you know, so I think they had to learn it. And, you know, I actually wrote an article on this once. We teach our kids, you know, morals. We teach them how to cook a meal, how to change a tire, whatever it is. But how often in our home do we teach them how to manage the daily finances? We don't.
I am so happy. My daughter is a senior in high school, and she has a class on financial literacy.
And that is so rare.
Yeah.
Yes, that is. And I'll tell you this, I wish that they did that as seniors in college about to go into the workforce as well.
Yes.
Because what I have found, I've worked with several, they think they have so much more money than they did because now they have a paycheck. And they can get into debt very easily, very quickly. They don't understand their paycheck. I'm earning $35,000. Why am I not receiving $35,000? Well, all the deductions, the taxes.
Right.
So I love that they're doing that. That school should be advertising that a lot stronger and letting everybody know, because that is something you can start your life off really well, or it can take you 10 years to recover from not knowing what you're doing. So.
Right. Definitely. I definitely had to learn the hard way. I needed you 20 years ago.
So let's talk. You had started bringing it up, and I didn't want to be rude, but I was anyway, and cut you off a little bit. But what is the difference between being the reactor and being the creator in your life?
So is most of your energy that you're living life with in reaction to somebody else, in reaction to somebody else's moods, in reaction to somebody else's decisions, right? Versus the way you take your power back is that you are creating your life. So one of, a lot of the people that I work with, for example, are getting out of toxic relationships. They're codependent. They're people who have spent a lifetime taking care of somebody, right? But that might be that so much of your energy is wrapped up in other versus in yourself. So when you can take that's part of that shift, right? I can take that energy and put it into myself and then be creative and actively author my life. That's just a totally different way of looking at it.
And creativity is huge. I am a huge advocate, even on the financial side. Obviously, I'm not talking about that creative accounting that gets people in jail. I'm talking about how do we get creative to get more of the things that will help us live our values, right? I mean, I have clients sometimes come to me and they under the impression it's 50-50. And I say, are you going to live on the left side or the right side of the house if it's going to be 50-50? And they're like, So yes, you can get creative and it's encouraged and usually helps you get to a better place, I think, ultimately. And getting to that new place, this is another thing. You've got all these people around you. We spoke about kind of the social pressures. And so I'm going to ask you to share some tips. I'm not sure if tips is the right word, but if you can share something on how do you handle other people's perception of you in this new identity and this new life?
Oh, well, not caring. You just don't care. No, that's easy. At the end of the day, what you think about your life is what matters the most. And I think if there's that healthy sense of emotional boundaries, there's that realization that a lot of people come to us, and it's not coming from an angry place, but they come to us and it's all subconscious from their own projections, right?
Right.
They might respond to your news of getting a divorce from their own experience of their parents getting divorced or their own divorce or their without any understanding of nuance or what your personal story is, what you actually want out of life. Like I remember, when I was getting divorced, I had a neighbor and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I was like, "No, really, today I'm feeling really happy about this divorce," right? But that's what I mean. If you have one child, people come up and go, "Oh, when's the second one coming?" Right?
Right.
So people kind of do that, and it's not coming from a mean place. But I think part of your identity and being divorced is understanding that. People's own fears get triggered.
Right.
Oh wow, he or she had the courage to leave their long-term marriage. Maybe I should start having more courage. Or am I doing the right thing? All of our relationships, everything around us really is mirroring back to us ourselves, right?
Right.
Including this kind of reaction that we get from others.
And it's interesting, that last part. I just want to tell you about a client who spoke to me that said that they grew up with cousins that are like brothers and sisters to them, and they went through a divorce. And one of these cousins said to her, my marriage has been miserable for 5 years, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And when you got divorced, the first reaction was, I need to get divorced. This is miserable. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, is there any way to save this marriage? And they ended up working on it and saving it. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean that just because you're getting divorced, somebody else is going to get divorced. Sometimes you can really help them in an amazing way
absolutely.
To save that marriage and rekindle that love and passion and excitement that was in their life that hasn't been there for sometimes 10 or 15 years, unfortunately.
I've had a few people come to me for divorce coaching and then have made a decision to make the marriage work. I think, again, a part of that is like a little reality testing, right? Because I start talking to them about the divorce process, and then they might say, "Oh, this is
grass is always green on the other side, right?
This isn't actually what I want." So, So people don't realize that sometimes divorce coaches actually save marriages.
Right. Yeah, and yes, I do want to throw that out. I don't know that I do that often enough. Our goal here is not to get you divorced.
No,
it's to educate you to make the right decision, and the right decision very well may be to stay, but work on things that are lacking. So yes, that is an important piece. So I'm going to ask one. I mean, I've got a million more questions, but going through a divorce
all the time. But you have to go on with your rock star life.
One of the things that I think is daunting in going through the divorce, kind of a little bit of what we've been just spoken about. It's a very personal life cycle for somebody to go through. Mm-hmm. How do you help them? Somebody comes to you and says, I'm really thinking this is not working. I think I need a divorce. Talk a little bit about how you work with a client or some of the things you might start them off with, just to give people a thought. And then we've probably got to wrap up after that, unfortunately.
You mean as far as like somebody who's thinking about divorce but hasn't decided yet?
Yeah. Somebody comes in, we just said, like somebody said, oh, they think about a divorce, but sometimes it's something that they can marry. It's a marriage they can save. When somebody walks in your door and it's daunting, they don't know what's coming next, understandably.
Right.
How do you kind of just talk to them? How do you acclimate them, guide them, choose the words, or but help them understand their situation a little bit better? Because they don't always understand their situation even.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a one session sort of thing. I mean, one of the first questions I always ask is, have you tried couples counseling? Have you tried individual and couples counseling? Because I want to know, what is the work that the couple has done in the past? And maybe you aren't supposed to say this. I've actually worked with people and with couples, because I do couples work as well, where I've said, you guys have so much good stuff here. I see this as like, there's some tweaking that needs to happen. There's some growth there's some shifting that needs to happen. But what do you think about? And I sort of, I throw it, as coaches, we're never supposed to tell people what to say. Right. But if I really feel that there's a sense that somebody is either not aware, or maybe, here's the other thing. There's a lot of TV shows about divorce. Like there's the one with Sarah Jessica Parker, right? There's Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce. But that's not always what divorce looks like, right? It always doesn't look like this fabulous TV show where I'm drinking martinis every night, right? And like wearing designer clothes. So I just want to make sure that it's coming from a position of empowerment, knowledge, self-awareness, because divorce, although we said 90% of people are way happier post-divorce, they really rediscovered themselves. Right. Divorce is not an easy process to go through, ever.
Not at all. I agree.
Well, I don't know if that helps, but
no, it does. I think one of the keys there is people don't always know the situation. They don't always know what's happening. They don't know what to expect. And creating that awareness and the education along the way that you do, I think, can be such a major piece in quelling fears, because it is scary.
Yep.
And the other thing is getting them to think ahead of time what things will look like after, as opposed to, all right, now I'm divorced. Now what do I do? Now I got to start thinking about my life. No, it's kind of a little late to start then. Not that you can't, but it's recommended, obviously.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, and that's the thing, it's like people get misinformation from TV, from neighbors, from friends, and might go into divorce with unrealistic expectations. I mean, I think that's, even in divorce coaching, that's one of the biggest things, is how do I manage somebody's expectations so they're realistic? Like, I've had a number of people come in and sort of have this fantasy, I want to say, of, when I'm in front of the judge is going to see that my wife or my husband is fill in the blank. And I'm like, most cases actually aren't technically in front of a judge. So and their faces are like, oh, you mean there's not a jury? No.
Nope.
Right. So if that's kind of the emotional hope or fantasy that you're thinking you're going to get out of divorce, it's not reality based. And these are smart people, by the way.
Yeah.
And I can see why they would have that perception, but it's not a true perception of what divorce actually is.
The other thing I would say is every judge, and most like large cities especially, have multiple judges that deal with family law and divorce. Mm-hmm. You could present the same case to 5 judges and not get the same result. And yes, to your point of Hollywood, that they all of a sudden, that last closing minute, they bring up that gem of an idea that incriminates the other party, and I'll give you all the millions that you want. It doesn't happen. Right. And the other thing that I think is important to remember is, if you are angry, which I can understand when people are, you know what has been done. Having somebody else, so to speak, say it in a court doesn't make you right or wrong. It's the exact same situation as it was before. Right. So if you can avoid the depositions and the myriad of discovery and your character being questioned and the other costs that come along with all of this, I would suggest avoid it. It's not fun.
I mean, success and healing comes outside of the courtroom.
Yes. And, I get it, but I will just give you one example. I've been deposed by an opposing counsel who I've worked with on cases, loves me, but their job was to discredit me. They couldn't. I mean, I'm not saying they did. They couldn't. But that's their goal, or that's their job. And so why would you want to put yourself through that when you can really do it in a cheaper, simpler, and hopefully even better way for yourself, that you can be in control of saying yes or no? So
absolutely.
Kat, how can people get in touch with you to learn more? And then I really do have to wrap up.
You can reach out. It's catblakecdc.com is my website, and my email is kat@catblakecdc.com.
Kat, thank you. I really appreciate it. I know on the finance side, you can make things complicated very easily. And that's nothing compared to the emotional side, because we can't really always control our emotions. They come in an instant, they're a roller coaster, we're wonderful, and then we're crossing the street and we're sobbing on the other end and we don't know why. So I really appreciate the insights, the thoughts that you have in helping people think through a lot of these difficult situations. And it's not an easy thing to work with. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to talk to you again.
We'll have you back on for sure. And I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. I want to thank CC Schatz, as always, for doing her magic behind the scenes. Go to goingsolomedia.com to learn more there as well. And we will see you in a couple of weeks at my next show. Have a great week. Thank you, everyone.